Hey guys, welcome to the show. This is HipHughes After the Bell. It's kind of like a vlog. It's a little bit weird. The first episode we did last week, where you can watch that right there by pressing the magic button, we looked at the candidates for the GOP primary 2016, and then we threw down some odds, and they didn't add up, but it was fun. So I figure we're going to do the Democrats this time. We're going to run through the list. We're going to throw down the odds. Political gangster style. So here we go. Batter up. Candidate number one. So guys, there's only two declared candidates, so this should be quick, but we're going to throw some extras in anyway. And of course, the first one is Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton, no doubt, has been preparing to run for quite some time, probably like since 1972 or something like that, but definitely more prepared than any other candidate. The insider game is hers. All the political machinery. She's got all the connections from being Secretary of State, being Senator from New York, being First Lady, being an advocate for children back in Arkansas. So in terms of her connections, booyah, good for her. She's going to, win that race, in terms of who's got the biggest network, that's for sure. But I always hesitate because I think back to 2008 and we were in the same boat where everybody thought it was going to be Hillary Clinton, and then Barack Obama was like, hey! And he stole it. So we want to, just leave the opportunity for that, because you really do never know. If we find out that she had a sex change operation and we have video of her like shooting heroin with Bruce Jenner, yeah, she's a goner. So let's just talk really quick about some of her positives and negatives. Well, we've already talked about her positives in terms of organizational stuff and, having experience, all that good stuff. First serious woman candidate, really. So that's going to kind of energize a lot of parts of the Democratic base. But there are some negatives, and of course the negatives, a lot of them are the same as the positives. The fact that she's raised so much money, and I think it's something like 18 out of her top 20 donors, maybe except for Emily's list, I think they're all like banks and media moguls and, Wall Street hedge fund people, and people that liberals would look at and they should shriek. They should go, this isn't good. This person has probably been bought out. Not to mention all the, scandals, whatever side of the fence you sit on. There's definitely a lot there for people to dig into and try to make something out of it, whether it is or not. I'm going way back to Watergate, Watergate, not Watergate, you idiot. I mean, Whitewater, back in the early 90s of the first Clinton presidency. But certainly, whether it's the emails now or Benghazi or Travelgate, there's all these gates, it's crazy. She comes with a lot of baggage, and I think that that can be her negative, of course. The lines are drawn. Like, there's not too many people that haven't made their mind up about whether or not they like Hillary Clinton. But I definitely think that she's probably the most prepared candidate for the general election. She beats all of the other Republican candidates in a 1-to-1 match, even though those polls probably don't mean too much now. But Hillary Clinton, I'll throw down like 2-to-1. I do different odds, but I don't know how to do 80% when you do the 2-to-1, 3-to-1 thing. So I couldn't figure that out. So if you're a math person, maybe you can hook me up. But I think that, 80% chance she's going to be the nominee. But there are some others. So the second declared candidacy is Bernie Sanders. And Bernie Sanders is an independent. He's a Democratic socialist. He's the only socialist in the U.S. Senate, that's for sure. From the great state of Vermont. And if the Republicans have a Tea Party to their right that votes in the base and influences their party, there is a coffee party, in a sense, like an ideological left that doesn't agree on a lot of things that these moderate, middle-of-the-road Democrats vote for. And I know a lot of people are going to scream when I say Barack Obama, but when Barack Obama votes for free trade, or Barack Obama, votes for something in terms of the war on drugs, or Barack Obama, doesn't do something that liberals want him to do, there is anger in the base. I don't think they influence the primary like the Tea Party influences the Republican Party, but certainly whether or not he can win, I don't know, probably not, but I think he can have an influencing effect. If Bernie Sanders is taken seriously, and he's bringing up these issues like the NSA, privacy, free trade, immigration, he wants $1 trillion in infrastructure spending. These are really big ideas from the left. He can push Hillary Clinton to the left. I don't think she wants to be pushed to the left. She's going to take those voters for granted. If you're an Hispanic poor person, she doesn't have to kiss, your ass. You're probably going to vote for her if you're going to vote. But Bernie Sanders can push her to the left to take some positions where she might have to stick to those positions in a general election. So I think that's probably his biggest influence. He fails to do what Barack Obama can do. Barack Obama in 2008 had the ability to unite different parts of the demographic base of Democrats, Hispanics and women and African Americans and young people, and there's all these different kind of sectors that revolved around Barack Obama, whether all the way up to suburban moms and lots of demographics. Bernie Sanders is pretty white, he's pretty old, he's got gray hair, he's from Vermont. So I don't know how much uniting that he can do. Now, if he's the only one in the race, and Hillary Clinton is caught with that Bruce Jenner sex, and she had a sex change, doing heroin, all that stuff, maybe Bernie Sanders has a shot. But we're going to put him at 50-1 because I don't think that he's a serious contender, even though he says he is. I don't think he's probably electable in terms of a general election. I think Democratic voters are a little bit more pragmatic in the sense of who they vote for, thinking about that general election where maybe people in the Tea Party on the right are more kind of voting for, what their heart says rather than maybe what their brain says, if that makes any sense at all. So, we're going to talk about some of the other candidates that might announce, and we'll throw down the odds. So, the rock and roll governor. Yeah, the rock and roll governor, a former governor of Maryland, a Democrat, Martin O'Malley, a Catholic. He's kind of like a Bill Clinton kind of character, I guess. Former mayor of Baltimore, which might not be a good thing nowadays. And he really made, kind of ironic, because he made his name with like this crime statistical approach to, lowering the crime rate, which he said works, but, taking credit for anything crime police related in, Baltimore is probably going to be a killer right now. I think that he probably has a chance with the Bruce Jenner heroin thing, better than Bernie Sanders, because in a sense, he's like the non-Clinton Clinton. Probably agrees with her on most issues, but he's not Hillary Clinton, and most people don't know his name. And he's a little bit edgy. Plays guitar and banjo. He sings in a band. He's got some things going on for him in terms of he's a very handsome man. He probably looks like a contender, but in terms of if Hillary's in the race and he's one-on-one with her, I think he's a 31 shot. I don't really think that he probably can do it. So that's Martin O'Malley, and now we have a Blue Dog Democrat. Blue Dog Democrat! So a Blue Dog Democrat is a kind of like a Republican rhino on the Democratic side, a Democrat in name only, somebody who is probably more of a Republican on a lot of issues, and of course that's debatable, but Jim Webb. And Jim Webb had announced an exploratory committee, so he might be seriously running, and I might not have mentioned it, but Martin O'Malley, I think, has an announcement scheduled. But Jim Webb, former senator from Virginia, he took down George Allen. I think that was back in 2002 or 2003, something like that. And he served one term in the Senate. And he isn't your typical Democrat. He's a deficit-cutting kind of guy. He worked for the Reagan administration. He's a hawk when it comes to most war issues, even Virginia, military family. And on social issues, he's probably a little bit more conservative than most Democrats. So he might see himself as kind of an alternative to where the Democratic Party is now, kind of trying to push it to the right a little bit. So whether or not he's a serious contender, I don't know. He's had some problems with ladies in his days. I remember I think he wrote a book called Why Women Can't Fight, when he was at West Point or something like that, and that probably wouldn't go over pretty good nowadays, I'm thinking. So that's Jim Webb. I'm going to put him at 40-1 because I don't really think that he's a serious contender. But there is another person thinking of running, and you probably have never heard of him in your life. Lincoln Chafee, I fooled you. Lincoln Chafee. Lincoln Chafee was a Republican from the state of Rhode Island. He was a senator. I don't know how the guy was allowed to call himself a Republican. He voted against the Iraq War. He's pro-choice. He's for gay rights. He wants to raise the minimum wage. He's against oil drilling in the Arctic. And he wants to be a communist. No, I'm just joking. He's kind of like, I guess he modeled himself after kind of like a George W.H. Bush, the senior Bush kind of character, like a statesman. And certainly he's for free trade, privatizing some Social Security. He's got some Republican flavor to him. But I think he sees himself as an alternative to Hillary Clinton. I don't think anybody else is going to see him as an alternative to Hillary Clinton. So we're going to throw him at a 75-1 because Lincoln Chafee's not going to win the nomination. And I'll eat my foot if I'm wrong. Joe Biden. I don't think Joe Biden's going to run, although he's talked about running before. He would be an alternative for sure from Hillary Clinton, and being the vice president, he would be, I think, taken seriously. I don't think he can win the nomination. Republicans would love it. We haven't talked about the general election, but I think they would love to run a campaign against Joe Biden. Joe Biden has said so many funky things, and there's so many weird visuals about Joe Biden. I don't think that he would be a great contender for the general election. But certainly he would be a name worth mentioning. So if he did run, if he threw his hat in the ring, I'll put him at a 25-1 odds. And now we have one person left. And I don't know if you can guess who I am thinking about, but we're going to talk about her right now. Yeah, Elizabeth Warren. I'm not running. She is the female Oklahoma Barack Obama of 2016. She could unite the base from the left. She could be appealable, is that a word, to a lot of different demographics in the Democratic primary, and be, I think, appealable in the general election to maybe a lot of Republicans. She's not your typical progressive Democrat. You know, she sowed her seeds as a Republican in Oklahoma, studying like bankruptcy law and fighting for the little guy, consumer protection, fighting for the American dream, fighting for equal opportunity. And that has floated her over to the Democratic side, with her seeing, you know, basically us versus them, kind of like the 1% and the big banks, and especially after her overseeing the TARP program, the bailout of all of those big banks at the end of the second Bush administration into the Barack Obama administration. She has constantly been somebody who said those banks need to be reined in, kind of too big to fail, can't exist anymore because they're going to keep raking the American people over the coals. I sound like her campaign advisor, but she's consistently said, I'm not going to run. She's a senator from Massachusetts. Maybe she's happy doing that, but I do think if she threw her name in the ring, you know, that would be a contest. I'll give her a 3-1 if she threw her name in the ring. I still think Hillary's got the edge, but it certainly would be interesting if Elizabeth Warren decided to run. You know, and we talk about authenticity in campaigns and who comes out looking real. And I think that in all of those candidates, I think that her and Bernie Sanders are probably the most authentic, most real candidates out there. And that can be appealable in a primary to people who are, you know, voting their conscience. Like I said before, a lot of Democrats, I think, are voting for the general election rather than voting their conscience, which is unlike the Republican primary. You have a hard time getting through that GOP if you're moderate on any issues. I remember that first primary, the big primary they had last time, and they asked all the Republicans if we gave you a 10-1 deal. Like if we said, well, you know, cut spending, you know, 10-1 versus, you know, new taxes or something like that. And they all said no, they wouldn't touch it because they knew that that was radioactivity in the Tea Party. You could lose the primary by saying that. I'm sure if they were president, all of them would take the deal. So the Democrats, I don't know. I think they're much more pragmatic about those types of things, but I'm getting off base now. So there you go, guys. I think I talked enough about the candidates. What do you guys think? Do you think it's going to be Hillary? Do you have a preference? You know, what do you think is going to happen? And who do you think has the best chance of winning a general election? And maybe you don't want them to win. Maybe you want them to anoint the worst one. So there you go, guys. Thanks for watching. I don't know if I'm going to keep calling this after the bell because that sounds a little bit weird. But I'm certainly going to try to do a vlog. I think that's what you kids out there in the internet call it today. Once a week, we'll talk about some issues. If you want me to talk about something specifically, you can leave that down in the comments below. Or you could just, you know, say something weird down in the comments below. I don't really care, to be honest with you. But I read them. I do. I really, really do. So we'll see you guys next time you press my buttons. I always say where attention goes, energy flows. And there you go, guys. Giddy up. That was fun.